What actually makes a woman miss you deeply isn't what most men think. It has nothing to do with looks, money, or status, and everything to do with one quiet decision. This isn't manipulation. This isn't a trick. This is the moment a man finally understands his own value, and what happens inside a woman's mind when he does. Let me walk you through exactly what she experiences. In the beginning, she doesn't sense anything changing. Life continues the way she designed it. You were her constant, the one she could reach for whenever loneliness crept in, the one who answered at midnight, the one who absorbed her moods like a sponge without ever asking her to be softer. You were reliable in ways she never acknowledged out loud. You rearranged your schedule around her uncertainty. You softened your voice when hers sharpened. You stayed patient through her walls, her coldness, her on-again, off-again energy. And what did your consistency teach her? Not gratitude. It taught her predictability. She learned that no matter how little she offered, you'd still be standing there, steady, waiting, hoping she'd finally see what was right in front of her. So she stopped trying, not dramatically, just gradually. The way someone stops watering a plant they assume will survive anyway. She thought your love was guaranteed. She thought your presence was permanent. She thought she could keep you on a shelf, available whenever she needed you, invisible when she didn't. And for a long time, she was right. But something changed inside you, and it didn't arrive with a speech. It didn't come with an ultimatum. It came quietly, like a man who finally exhales after holding his breath for too long. You simply stopped. Not out of cruelty, not as a strategy. You stopped because you finally ran out of reasons to keep giving yourself to someone who treated your efforts like background noise. You stopped reaching out first. You stopped softening your boundaries to accommodate her moods. You stopped translating her silence into meaning, searching for messages she never actually sent. You stopped writing long responses to her one-word replies. You stopped rehearsing conversations in your head, trying to find the perfect words that would finally make her understand. And the extraordinary thing about that stillness, it carried a kind of quiet dignity she had never felt from you before. Because your silence didn't sound like sadness. It didn't sound like punishment. It sounded like a man who had finally found solid ground beneath his feet. That's when she noticed. It wasn't a loud realization. It was a slow, creeping awareness. Like when you reach for something that's always been on the counter and discover it isn't there anymore. She reached for your reaction and found none. She reached for your worry and it was gone. She reached for the familiar version of you, the one whose whole emotional world revolved around her response. And that version had quietly left the building. For the first time, she felt the weight of your absence. Not the dramatic absence of a breakup, the deeper kind, the absence of someone who used to make you feel important simply by needing you and now doesn't need you at all. The balance begins shifting in ways she can't immediately name. You respond differently now, not rudely, not coldly, just completely. You answer when it suits you. You engage when it's genuine. You no longer perform availability. You stop shrinking your presence to protect her comfort. When she sends mixed signals, you don't decode them anymore. You simply proceed with your own life as if the confusion she creates is no longer your problem to solve. And it isn't. She tries the familiar patterns first, a little distance to make you lean in, a little warmth to reel you back. She waits for you to ask what's wrong, to check in, to circle back with that familiar, anxious energy. But you don't. You stay level. You stay unbothered, not as performance, but as genuine peace. Because something inside you has reorganized itself around a new priority, your own stability. She throws a sharp comment your way. You don't react. She creates unnecessary tension. You don't feed it. She tests the temperature of your feelings and finds something she wasn't expecting. Not anger, not heartbreak. Just a man who has quietly moved his own well-being to the center of his world. And that is profoundly disorienting for her, because she built her sense of influence on your responsiveness. Every time you chased her mood, every time you bent yourself to manage her emotions, every time you over-explained just to earn a moment of her softness, that was the currency she was spending. She thought she had an unlimited supply of it, but the supply ran out. And she never saw it coming. Here's what happens inside her psychology at this moment. She starts reviewing her own behavior, not immediately, not consciously at first, but the mind always searches for explanation when something familiar disappears. She starts replaying moments. She starts asking herself what shifted. She starts noticing things she dismissed before: your effort, your patience, your consistency, the 100 small ways you showed up that she never once acknowledged. She sees you now, actually sees you. And the image doesn't match what she expected. You're not sitting somewhere quietly falling apart. You're not waiting by the phone hoping she circles back. You're not performing happiness to provoke her attention. You're simply living. You look lighter than she's seen you in years. You're investing energy into goals, friendships, personal growth. You're laughing with people who value your presence. You're showing up for yourself the way you once showed up for her. And in one unguarded moment, she realizes something that genuinely unsettles her. She didn't diminish you, she redirected you. All that energy you once poured in her direction, you redirected it inward, toward your own growth, your own healing, your own becoming. And watching you flourish in a life where she no longer occupies the center, that's the moment that stays with her. Not because you planned it, not because it was strategy, but because it's real, and real things land differently than games ever could. There's another layer that cuts even deeper. The moment you stop justifying yourself to her. You used to explain everything: your choices, your feelings, your silences. You handed her the full architecture of your inner world, hoping she'd respect what she found there. You explained until your voice felt hollow. You clarified until clarity itself felt pointless. You defended yourself against accusations you never deserved, and through every explanation, you were unconsciously asking for her permission to exist as you were. Then one day, you simply stopped asking. She starts her familiar routine: the reframing of history, the quiet blame, the subtle suggestion that everything difficult between you was somehow your creation. And you listen calmly. You don't interrupt. You don't defend. You don't reconstruct the timeline to prove your innocence. When she finishes, you simply remain composed. You respond briefly or not at all, and you leave the conversation without having surrendered a single piece of your peace. That composure is more powerful than any argument you could have won. Because she can't reshape what you don't offer her. She can't rewrite a story you've stopped narrating. She can't use your own emotions against you when you've learned to hold them with steadiness instead of desperation. And what settles over her in that silence is something she wasn't prepared for: accountability. Not delivered by you, not demanded, just quietly present, filling the space where your over-explaining used to live. She begins to understand slowly what she had: a man who communicated with openness, who loved without conditions attached, who stayed through difficulty not from weakness but from genuine commitment. A man who kept showing up even when showing up wasn't reciprocated. Most people only recognize that kind of devotion from the distance of its absence, and now she has all the distance she needs to see it clearly. But recognition isn't the same as a second chance, because here's what's true about a man who has genuinely healed. He doesn't return to the same conditions that broke him open, not out of pride, not out of stubbornness, but because the version of him that needed her validation no longer exists. He has been replaced by someone who knows his own worth without requiring anyone's confirmation of it. This is not about revenge. It bears repeating because it matters. This is not about making her feel pain so that you feel powerful. This is about something far more significant. This is about a man completing the difficult, quiet, unglamorous work of rebuilding his relationship with himself, choosing his inner peace over the turbulence of situations that were never going to give him what he deserved. Deciding that his emotional energy is a valuable resource, not an unlimited offering for those who never treasured it. When a man reaches that place, something in his entire presence transforms. He stops performing confidence and starts embodying it. He stops seeking rooms where he has to prove himself and starts building spaces where he naturally belongs. He stops measuring his value through how much someone wants him and starts understanding his worth as something that existed long before she entered the story. He becomes, without trying, someone worth remembering. And the women who once walked past that kind of man, who mistook his steadiness for simplicity, his patience for weakness, his love for something they could always return to, they remember. They remember the exact feeling of his presence, the warmth that asked for so little, the effort that never made demands, the man who was, quietly, exactly what they needed and what they failed to protect. They remember the day his energy changed, the day he stopped leaning in, the day his eyes stopped searching their face for approval. They remember how different he looked when he was finally free, and they understand too late that they were never actually keeping him. They were only borrowing time from a man whose worth was always beyond what they were willing to offer. That is not his loss. That is his graduation. So if you've ever stood in your own silence and chosen dignity over drama, if you've ever decided your peace was worth more than proving yourself to someone who wasn't paying attention, carry that with you. Your stillness is not weakness. Your silence is not surrender. Your healing is not invisible. It is, in fact, the most powerful thing about you. And the right people, the ones who deserve to witness it, will recognize it from the very first moment. You were never asking for too much. You were simply asking the wrong person. And now you know the difference.